Hey, welcome to episode 193 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. This episode is entitled Be Powerful, but it's B-E powerful, be powerful. Today's guest, eh, today's guest is absolutely fascinated with bees and I don't know that much about bees and so I'm so excited because there's billions of things we could do in this life and we don't get to do them all, but other people are doing the things that we don't get to do. So talking to them kind of really fills in a world and makes it richer. So I'm so excited to talk with my guest today. And I'll tell you more about her, but first this.
Today's guest, Janae Becher.
Welcome back to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. As I said, I don't know much about bees other than that they are communal creatures who are vital to many ecosystems that my Grandpa Schellinger had kept bees and that bees create delicious honey. Oh gosh, I love honey. I love so many foods, but I do love honey too. But my guest today, Jenae, knows a whole heck of a lot about the habits, biology, and the wonder of bees. I'm excited to learn how she came to be interested in this magnificent insect, what she's learned about them that goes beyond the basics, why she's researching them, and what lessons bees have for all of us. Having recently graduated, I'm also eager to hear about her transition from college to career. Please, one more thing. How did I meet Jenae? This is a great story. So went to David O'Hare's office to pick up something. He's a professor at, excuse me. He's a professor at Augustana College, and I've developed a friendship with him, and it's just one. And he's incredible. So I was there to pick something up, and Jenae walked in his office to ask him a question, and instantly he said, "Hey, Jason, you need to have Jenae on your podcast." And David was a past guest, and he's just a brilliant person. So like, right then and that, not knowing Jenae at all, I'm like, yes, of course. So please welcome to the Awkwardly Awesome Studio, Janae Becher, I think.
Yes.
How did you say your last name?
Yes, it is Beecher, so you got it.
Good. So, thanks for being here, Janae.
Yes, well, thank you for having me.
So, so when you were a kid, when's the first time you remember being interested in the outdoors?
Well, in the outdoors, it was since I live in the country. So forever. We moved when I was 2, which was when my sister was born, and that's when we moved to a rural area in Minnesota. So I have always been outside. um, all of my chores always had to do with being outside as well, like making sure I was stacking wood after my dad had cut it, or picking up sticks, or we're going outside into the garden. I remember one of my first times I was ever introduced to the idea of bees was when I was actually stung by them in our, we have a turnaround driveway actually, and in there was these really old railroad ties, and
Hmm.
there was a hornet's nest there, and I decided to sit down on one of those railroad ties right next to the hive. So I got stung a few times, and from that point on, I wasn't really like that excited about bees. But then when I got to college, then that changed, and I was like, okay, I can I can forget the past traumas, and I'm get excited about them now.
So, your early experience probably represents a lot of people's. Janae's in her graduate office, so there's going to be
Some
noise in
noise, yeah.
the background, like bunch of brilliant people talking about things.
Yeah,
So,
they're all yes, they're all talking about bees, or actually, I think that's Asmita and Michaela. They're talking about our pollen sorting for Mississippi. So yeah, we're figuring all that out.
wow, I'm excited to get to all that later.
hmm
So for us humans, unfortunately, many of our experiences w- they kind of fall into two camps. Either we think animals are cute and lovely, uh, cute and lovely, or else we think of them being a danger to us. And sometimes we think of them both being a danger to us and being lovely like a bear. Bear seems cute. But so how did you get beyond your initial interaction with bees?
Yeah, I would say staying outside, just keep going, even though like I had these past bad experiences. Because I have gardens around my house in Minnesota, and like just everywhere you go, whenever there's flowers, you're gonna see different kinds of bees. Um, I definitely was not a fan of insects for a long time, but I think just like over time, I was like, oh wow, these bees, they're cute. They're doing their thing. They're out and about. But it wasn't really until college where I was like, okay, these are kind of cool. And that's actually with Dr. O'Hara. He asked me to become part of our beekeeping team. And then that kind of like clicked and made me not afraid of them, because I had to work with them now. So it's like, well, if you're afraid of them, you're not going to be successful. Um,
Mm,
and the bee
mm.
stings, they're not going to really hurt you unless you're allergic. And yeah, it's a little bit painful for a little bit, but I mean, the more you do it, the more you get used to it. And it's just a defense mechanism. Like that's what helped me kind of figure it out, is like, okay, these bees are not mean. They're not trying to hurt you. They just want to protect what they already have. So yeah, because they're not even trying to protect their honey. They're trying to protect their kids. They're trying to protect everyone that's in the hive. They're like, we don't care about the honey. We just want to make sure that our next generation survives. So the only times I've really been stung since then is when I'm going into a hive. It's not when I'm out and about looking at the flowers or anything like that. They're not worried about it then, because they're just trying to collect food. They're not trying to protect their young. So they're not really going to try to get you.
You said a few amazing things. That first of all, you said if you're afraid of them, you're not going to be successful. Could you say more about that?
Yeah. Um, well, kind of like with many things in life is that um, you got to go into the unknown, and that's how
Mm,
you're able to grow. So the more you get to learn about stuff that you might be afraid of or that you don't understand, then you will understand after you've started to open yourself up to it, and it no longer is scary. So kind of have to fake it till you make it sometimes with your fears or your um, things that you don't fully understand in the world, but then
mm,
you find that joy and that amazement afterwards. Yeah.
mm. It's beautifully said. And then you also said said that bees aren't trying to be mean. They don't have a they're not trying to enact revenge on humans, or they're not angry at they're not they don't have deep seated anger at humans. They're simply trying to defend the young. They're trying to get by in the world. Can you please say a little more about that?
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to think. So, yeah, they're just trying to get around, and the bees that you usually see out in the wild, they're just foraging, especially honeybees, just because they're so eusocial and have like a big network and they have the hive. Um, they're just trying to collect the stuff that they have and then get back to the hive and then be able to be part of that community. But like more solitary bees, they're looking out for themselves. So maybe they're a little bit more testy, but as long as you approach them in a kind manner and you're being respectful of space, just like, people want to be aware of people's social bubbles and their space. Like the bees are the same way. So if you go up to them slowly and you're respectful, you can get a very good photo of them and you can see what they're doing. You can interact with them. You can help them out even if you find them in the water or something like that. They aren't going to get you as long as you're being nice and respectful, just like every other person. You want to be and treat people how you want to be treated. Well, treat insects and other animals the way you want to be treated, and they're pretty open to that.
So so what would be a respect? What would be some respectful actions towards the bee, and some disrespectful actions towards the bee?
Well, I can think of a disrespectful action right away. Swatting right away as you see a bee come towards you.
Mm.
It can be kind of terrifying to hear a bee by your face and instinctively want to swat at it, but
Yeah, it's
that's
so
gonna,
instinctive.
yeah,
Ah.
it's gonna make it worse. So it's really hard to like fight that. So whenever I hear something buzzing around me, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stay still. They're more terrified than I am. They're threatened. They think they're gonna die. So I won't die. I'm not gonna die from a sting. So I'm the threat here. That's what I have to
Mm,
remember is that I'm the threat.
mm,
So I need
mm,
to de-escalate. I
mm.
need to be the person that makes makes it a no threat zone. And so yeah, I'm just looking around. I'm like,
I
okay,
need to be the person that makes it a no threat zone. So
yeah.
you're just looking around.
hmm Looking around, making sure. I'm like, okay, do I see it? Has it landed on me? Has it tried to sting me? And if it does sting me, then I'm like, okay, well, I'll be calm. They're gonna be stuck now. Usually the honeybees, they get stuck just because they can only sting once. And if you wait long enough, sometimes they can retract their sting. They're like, okay, actually, you're not a threat. And then if you wait long enough, they might be able to wiggle it back out. But that's
And
rare.
then would they stay alive if they
Yeah.
retracted this thing?
It It depends. So if they move too quickly and they try to like run away, then they're probably going to pull out their butt and make all their guts fall out, and you'll see the stinger. It looks really, yeah, it's a little gross. But otherwise, they can kind of do little corkscrew motions. So they're just like walking back and forth around their hand, and then they might just keep moving around to kind of work their stinger out of your skin, because they have barbs on the end of their stinger, so they need to be able to like get it back out. And then they could get back out and not die, but that takes some time, and it's still going to hurt the whole time. So it can be a really big game in patience.
A big game and patience.
Mhm.
And sometimes patience is really difficult, especially when patience and panic are intermixed. Patience can be really hard, but it sounds like patience definitely can lead to the best outcome for us, but also definitely for the bee.
Yes. And I think that kind of goes with just all insects, and especially all bees in general, is that when you see a bee around, it's really hard to not go to panic right away. But
Mm,
just know that you're in their space and they're not in your
mm.
space. Because if you see a bee inside, okay, yeah, we've made that space for us. But I mean, all structures are just we decided where we wanted to put them. They were lots of insects were here before us. They used to be really big in the past as well, but they've they've always been here with us. So we got to learn how to intermingle and not always go straight to the fear.
Intermingle and not always go straight to the fear. I have to say I'm surprised. I didn't expect to in this conversation about bees to be talking about staying calm and fear and all these human things when we perceive a threat is it's so tempting to go into fight or flight. It's just so tempting, and sometimes the best course is to notice the urge and then do the opposite. So some episodes ago I was talking to a flight nurse who's been on thousands of flights, and I asked him what the main thing someone in an emergency situation, a layperson in an emergency situation could do to um to create a better possibility of a good outcome. And he waited away. He said the best thing that person can do is stay calm. And it's interesting to me that you are saying the same thing. That's really cool.
Well, thank you. It has taken me a while to get there. That's for sure. Like, I still freak out a little bit, especially when all of a sudden I hear a bee by my face. I'm like, oh God, oh no. But I'm like, well, as long as they don't hit most of my face, like they don't get in my eye, they don't get in my ear, they don't go up my nose, I'll be okay. I've been stung in the lip before. It just looks
Oh,
really funny because your face just kind of gets a little swollen, but it's like, hey, you just went to the dentist and you got some work done, and now your face is a little fuzzy and stuff. But it goes away. I mean, it does take a little bit, but it's a good story. Um,
it
yeah,
is a good
it's a good
story.
story.
So what were the steps that in your journey to learning how to act calmer in your relationship to bees? Were there steps in that process? What was that like?
I think so. So for me in the beginning, it's like, okay, I have a bee suit. I can put on a suit and be protected. So that's the first thing. I was like, wow, I can be around these things. Even though they're really mad at me, I am
Mm.
protected. Because I've been around,
And sometimes the answer to dealing with situations that where we feel panic is to protect ourselves in some way. Sometimes the answer is the bee suit. So go on, please.
yeah, it was like a first type of barrier to kind of get you used to being in that situation of kind of more panic or an unfamiliar place. So you have the bee suit on and you're in a swarm, or you're used to, well, not necessarily a swarm. Swarm is a different meaning. I mean, I was in an angry hive and you just see everyone coming at you.
How do you define an angry hive?
They're diving at your face. They are trying to sting your face. They're trying to sting
Okay, I feel
many.
feelings come up just as you say that.
Yeah, it can be very terrifying because you're like, did I zip everything up? Am I velcroed all up together? Am I gonna be protected? And then you got to
Mm.
think, okay, well, calm yourself down because the more you're calm, the more you have control. Well, then everything around you will be okay, and you know that you can always walk away. You can walk away from that storm, and
You
they
can
might,
walk away from that
yeah.
storm.
Yeah, but they might still be a little angry, they might follow you, but the majority will stay there. And you can take a break. That's the other thing. You can take a break, you can take your time, and you have a smoker with you. So you're able to kind of calm them down. You're able to get them to go away or be distracted by other things, help them try to find different things to do with their time. So you're both finding ways to interact with each other and both cope in a way.
I saw my grandpa Francis use the smoker, but I don't know that I ever asked what a smoker does. How does it calm the bees?
Yeah, well, it's kind of weird. You're kind of telling them that their house is on fire and they need to evacuate. It's kind of like they're going to go to their honey storage and they're going to try to feed. They're going to engorge themselves because they're like, well, what if this is the last time I get to be in this hive and we have to move and we have to take as much food with us before we have to make a new hive? So they're just trying to get energy. They're trying to store energy. At least that's what we see as beekeepers. I'm probably not an expert on that, but I always see a bunch of bees just going straight into their honey whenever we get a smoker out. So it kind of deters the bees that are out and about, or tells at least the bees that are still in the hive to stay in the hive and get ready for whatever's about to come. Yeah, because there's different roles of different bees. So like there's the guard bees and stuff like that. So they're probably out already coming at me. But like especially the nurse bees or other bees that are inside the hive, keeping the hive at like just in homeostasis, basically, they're the ones that are going to be trying to get that food. And if there's a threat that comes into the hive, then they will go after an attack. But if they're distracted or fully sleepy on a full stomach, they're not gonna they're not gonna be as deterred or upset. Or why did I say deterred? They will be deterred, but they won't be as upset.
For someone who's never seen a smoker, how would you describe what it looks like?
Yeah. It is like a little can. I want to say it's like this tall, about like the size of my head. Um, and usually there's a metal kind of bracket around it just to keep your hands from touching the hot metal. So instead you're touching this cage around it. And then there's a little kind of like funnel on top of it that points out. So it funnels the smoke into one direction. And then on the back you have like a little air squeeze pouch, kind of like what you'd use in your fireplace with trying to squeeze out a bunch of air to keep your fire going. It's very similar, but instead
So,
it's going to
so
the bottom.
you can control how much smoke.
Yes, exactly. And also keep your fire going on the inside. But it's not a raging fire. We're putting just like you can put dry grass, you can put pine needles, you can put hay, cotton, a whole bunch of different kinds of material, and they will slow burn. Because you don't want a raging fire, you want a slow burn that creates a lot of smoke. So that's why you use all that really dry material.
As a researcher, why do you enter a bees area usually, or is it for all different reasons?
It really depends. Like for me, in undergrad, my primary major was biochemistry. So I
Oh.
approached the bees. I know already.
I
I,
mean,
ap-
biochemistry. I'm sorry. It sounds really challenging. That was my reaction.
I understand it is the biggest credit wise major at Augie. So I think it was
Wow.
like 71 credits. I don't know if that's changed since I've graduated, but my other majors, German was like 32, and environmental studies was around that as well. And just because they overlapped, that's why I was able to do those guys. It was really nice. It worked out really well to have all of those classes together.
So biochemistry, German, and environmental studies. Three majors?
Yes, I am very lucky that I was able to have that interdisciplinary experience, especially with coming in with so many credits already from high school, especially with German and my other stuff. That allowed me to just go straight into the things I wanted, which was amazing.
Wow. Wow. Be, amazing. So in your undergrad experience, why would you approach bees as an undergrad?
Yeah. For research, I was doing research with the microbiome of the gut of honeybees during going into my sophomore year during that summer because there was a whole bunch of stuff I could do with genetics and things like that. And I was getting used to just knowing what is research? What is this something I would like? And because there was going to be the bee program on campus, I was like, hey, this might help me with becoming a better leader in that way, or at least understanding more like the deeper mechanisms of the organism I would be working with. And then I kind of just continued from there. I made my own research proposal that I went through with our chemistry department the next summer, and I collected samples then, and then I kept doing that research, and I did chemistry, of course, with that. I was analyzing bee bread, and then I collected the DNA samples from that bee bread, and I was checking to see, okay, what kind of microbes interact with that bee bread to maybe change the composition. Does it change the composition? Does it ferment? Does it not ferment? And that's kind of led me to where my PhD is now.
Okay. Let's back up real quick. There's a lot I didn't get. So when you're researching the microbiome of the gut, what kind of samples are you taking?
I am dissecting the bees and taking their guts out, and then I'm separating the gut sections and I'm grinding them up, and then then I plate them on culture plates and stuff, and then I isolate the bacteria, and then I sequence them to find out who were they.
So when you were going into the bee space as an undergrad, you were getting bees so you could dissect them.
Yeah, it was not necessarily the most proud moment I had of killing bees, sadly, but we tried to do it as humanely as possible, where we took the forager bees, which are the oldest bees. Um, Honeybees only live around 40 days, so they have a pretty short lifetime, and in their lifetime, they make like a little little droplet or like a teaspoon. I think it's a teaspoon of honey. It's like very small amount that they are able to make per bee. Um, but yeah, we took the oldest bees because they're probably the ones that are not going to come back. They might have some issues while they're out. They might accidentally get eaten, killed, rained on, have their wings destroyed. So we tried to take those bees because we already knew that they had done a lot for the hive and
Hmm.
they have a very established microbiome because they've been out and about and doing a whole bunch of things.
So way away, the some of your freshman year, you're into a very challenging type of collection because you're entering the space of the hive. You're having to determine which bees you're looking for, and you're having to um to collect them. It sounds not easy.
Yeah, um, with the forager bees, because they're out and about, we can usually just stay on the outskirts of the hive and we just watch them go back in. And we have a little aspirator that allows us to kind of just suck them up into a little temporary chamber while we try to collect them. So it's not as crazy. It is weird that you're like using something to like basically vacuum them up into an area, but as long as we caught a bee that was um, I want to say coming into the hive, we were pretty guaranteed to have nectar in their foregut and also know that they are the right age of bee. Excuse me.
So once you got the bees, you would be dissecting them. Is that like are you using a microscope to do that?
Um, well, you can do it by eye or you can do it by microscope. So there are special microscopes that are not as powerful, but are like a different kind of magnifying glass. Um, my eyes are still pretty good, so I was able to just use my tweezers and I held their abdomen and then I would get their foregut and then I would go from the stinger and you just pull on the stinger and it pulls out their hindgut and their midgut. And then that's how I was able to just separate them. And the reason we want bees coming back into the hive is because then their foregut's full and it's easier to collect because the foregut is so tiny or transient and transparent even that it's easier to see it when it's full.
In the first summer you were analyzing, what kind of research project were
Yeah,
you doing?
I was trying to look at how or like what kind of microbes were in there. First, I was trying to confirm that because it's pretty widely known, like the species and how much they are, or like how much they are in each gut section. It's a very easy um, model organism to use for the gut microbiome. I was just reading a paper actually about that and how they're using the gut microbiome of the honeybee to kind of do studies for humans and other species because we can look at how um, their diet of fats or like high density fat diets or stuff like that might affect us as well because it translates so well, I guess, which pretty cool. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah, but the reason I was looking at stuff is because we're trying to see how do these different microbes interact with each other. And we are looking at different biosensing molecules. So we're trying to see um, if this bacteria put out a molecule into this whole big area that's communicable between species, how do they influence each other? Can they send out a signal that says, stop growing, you're taking too much of my food, and I'm going to bully you into submission to allow me to get more food? Or are they trying to work together more and say, hey, I know that you produce a lot of this stuff, let me take some of that and I can make stuff that you need as well. So it's like,
Uh,
how do they do checks and balances with each other through
wow.
these sensing molecules, which we do as humans as well, and we do with our bacteria. But it's like, how does this microbiome, how does this community work together or not work together?
So, did you discover a more symbiotic relationship or a more adversarial?
Well, that was only my first summer, so I only started to do a little tiny bit, but I know that there's a lot of papers out there that probably could tell you a lot more. The molecule that we were looking for specifically, we could not find, which was
Hmm.
very different from the research that my professor was doing for her PhD. She was like, this molecule is always here. What is wrong? Like, what is going on?
Hmm.
So I definitely gave her probably something to look at more because she was like, why
Hmm.
can't I find this thing that I've known exists? But we looked to see in general, like, okay, what if we put this bacteria with this bacteria? What if we put the supernatant of this bacteria into this colony? And what the supernatant is, it doesn't have any bacteria in it, but it does have the sensing molecules. It does have different foods. It has all the stuff that it has the byproducts of that bacteria. So you can at least see in general, like by like a shotgun approach, how do these different bacteria affect each other's growth? You might not know what biosensing molecules you have in there, but you can at least see, okay, this bacteria will tell this one to grow more or grow less. And yeah, that's as much as I got in that first year, was just seeing,
As you
yeah,
describe this, it reminds me how much surprise is a part of, and discovery is a part of science. Like your professor had expected to find this molecule, but then it wasn't that, and it's so interesting how much surprise and discovery is part of this all. Can can you say? Or I'm wondering how surprising. What's your relationship as a researcher with surprise and discovery?
it's constant. It's really constant. Like
Mm.
this, even this month, me trying to grow some plants, I was expecting, I was like, okay, I can transplant these guys now. They're going to survive. But then once we did, I was like, oh, I just had 2,000 plants die because their root system wasn't formed enough and they dried up. So it's constant like discovering, learning. I'm working on a manuscript right now and I'm just reading new things about bees and stuff. So like right now, what I just told you about like the diet of honeybees being used as a model organism for humans, like that's new. I just read that this morning. So it's constant, like you're constantly having to learn, and I think that's one thing I like about my PhD program is that it's encouraging me to continue my learning.
It sounds like you enjoy learning new things rather than just saying this is my set of knowledge. I'm good. I don't need to learn anymore. What do you think gives you so much joy about learning new things?
I think it's sharing that knowledge. um,
Mm.
I like always talking to people and learning new things. It's a way for me to socially interact with the world around me, because I learn new things about how the world works and I'm like, well, I'm constantly learning stuff about myself as well. um, it's just a way to continue kind of having like intellectual stimulation. I don't know, I think that's kind of along the lines is with learning, it just brings me like that satisfaction, that joy of knowing something new. It's like, oh my god, I would never expect that. It's like the adrenaline rush or the surprise. So I bet that's kind of more along the lines like why I like learning, because it just causes that kind of not dopamine rush, but like just like a little surprise.
I think of going into, as you say that, I think of going into the theater to a movie I've never seen, and anticipating the surprise of, like, I don't know what's going to happen in this movie. I have a little idea because I've seen the preview, maybe, but that surprise is exciting.
Yes. And I think that's why with my PhD and stuff, it's like I get to just continue doing this. And then even afterwards, like going into maybe being a professor and teaching other people, like that's really exciting because I get to teach them to have that same excitement. And I get to see that excitement on their face when they're learning new things or when they're figuring out themselves and stuff like that. Like that's very powerful, I feel, and very rewarding.
I have to ask this: how can excitement be taught?
Oh my goodness. I have no idea. I'm trying to think like why do I get excited? Or why do people get excited and stuff like that? And I think it's just not being afraid to express yourself. I think that's a first step because if you feel like you're going to be judged or you're worried about something, it's very hard to be excited because you're
Mm,
kind of thinking about other things in the background. And you
mm,
might mistake the excitement for some kind of fear or for something else. And you might not be able to fully recognize it. And I think, like, with
mm.
me, with my passions with music and photography, or like going outside and being in nature and stuff like that, like, I'm just thinking about the wonder or just looking at the world with open eyes and no expectations, and that allows me to just take it all in. So I think that's more of approach to go at is just um, expectations of you're gonna learn something new, and that's where I think I just get excited.
What a neat way to start each day with the expectation that I'm going to learn something new. What a way to wake up there. That's really fun. So you said you also enjoy photography.
Yes, I actually have all of my camera supplies right below me because we've been doing videos for the week for our lab, and I'm going camping this weekend to do some bee surveys. So I need my cameras for that because I got to be able to tell the difference between the different bees that I collect. They're not going to die. I'm gonna sedate them by putting them in the cold, and then I'll take photos of them, and then I'll release them, and they'll be okay.
How do you make bees cold?
Yeah, I am going to grab a cooler. I'm going to put some ice in there. I'm going to grab some collection vials. And
Mm.
then when I have my nets as well, my bee nets. So now I'll grab them in the net really nicely, and then I'll coax them to get into that container, put the lid on, and then that container goes in the cooler. And then I wait like at max 15 minutes, and then I'll take them out when they're not moving around anymore, and I take the photos. Yeah.
Wow. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask what is your PhD thesis on a project?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something that we've been actually discussing and writing, and I've been figuring out just within this past month. So I'm a PhD candidate for entomology here at Mississippi State University, and that's like in the middle of the state, more near the side of Alabama. So it's a big change from where I lived in Minnesota and where I went to school in South Dakota. It's very hot down here, and I've been told it's not that bad yet, so get ready. And
And you're
um,
dealing with a lot of humidity, huh?
oh my God, it's like always past 80% around here for humidity. Like I will get out of my car from AC and immediately my glasses fog up, no matter
Oh
what.
my gosh. Oh my god.
Yeah. But with my thesis, I am looking at pollen. So that's why I'm collecting all of that pollen from those flowers. And it's a lot of pollen. Like you wouldn't think it like flowers don't make that much. So you need to have a lot of flowers. So I'm
Oh,
collecting pollen and I'm going to look at how it changes, when it changes, what causes the changes, and then see, okay, what happens if you have it. I can't say that much. See, that's the problem. I'm like, I can tell you I'm working with pollen. I'm going to look at bee bread and we're going to see how they change over time and kind of make some recommendations from there.
oh,
Uh,
so what is bee bread?
yeah, that's been my primary study for a few years is bee bread is pollen and honey and some bee spit combined. And it's the way that they store their food for a longer period of time. And it's one of their main things that they eat. Like, yeah, they get their carbohydrates and stuff like that from their honey, but all of their protein and fatty acids for the most part come from that bee bread. So they're using that a lot because I think their body fat ratio is like over 50%. So like or like the amount of fatty acids, the amount of stuff that they have, like they need a lot of it.
Wow. Well, so you're looking at pollen in hopes of giving recommendations on growing better flowers, or in hopes of
Mm,
what?
I think we're just gonna look at when is the best time to give this kind of food to your bees, or how to best use it, like how to best store it, how to best like what is the best mixture, like all those different kind of things, like what is the best nutrition for your bees. So I'm looking at the
Wow,
nutrition of
what
bees.
is the best nutrition for your bees?
Hmm.
I've never thought about that question, but to a beekeeper, that's like a huge question.
Yeah. Um, there's lots of different flowers, and some flowers, when in their pollen, they only have certain kinds of fatty acids, and bees need different fatty acids. So sometimes, if you have a monoculture, they might not get the fatty acids that they need.
Mm.
So it's very important to have a diversity of that kind of pollen and stuff like that. And that's stuff that we're working on. I know that there's a lot of research out there about that. Um, and it at Mississippi, they're actually doing inventory of all the different types of pollen or different flowers in Mississippi and around, I think, neighboring states. I can't remember how far it's gone, but I know for sure Mississippi is our primary objective just because we're in that state. But they're just looking at what is in this pollen and what do the bees get from it. So they can kind of make some recommendations from there.
You mentioned the difference in the heat and humidity, but what's it like as a biology student who's lived in Minnesota and South Dakota, being in a whole
Ooh.
new ecosystem?
I mean, for the most part, it's pretty similar. It is definitely more wet. It There's definitely a lot more trees around me, which is kind of interesting. I mean, they still have lots of farms. They're able to start farming a lot earlier than us in the northern states. Um, the research season here starts in like February and goes
Wow.
until November. So,
Wow.
yeah. And me, when I came down, I looked at the corn and it was already past my hip, and that was in May. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Holy.
it grows. Their growing season is a little shifted. They have a few more growing seasons than we do. Um, yeah, but
So when would they plan? Like in February?
like yeah, some of our research for bees, we start collecting the bees around February. It's like warm enough to go outside in February. And I was like,
Oh.
that's like when our winter really begins. That's when it gets cold here in South Dakota. That's when we're really getting a lot of snow. So it's a big change.
Wow.
But yeah, they still get winter. But they're like, yeah, we get below zero sometimes. And I was like, sometimes. We get below zero every time.
Wow. Well, so speaking of big changes, yeah, you're changing growing seasons from South Dakota to Mississippi, but you're also making the change from college into grad school, and then you'll go into a career. So what's the change from college to grad school? Oh, first of all, this is amazing. When did you graduate?
Um, when do I graduate from here?
No, when
From
did
or
you
when did
graduate
I? Oh my goodness.
from
Yeah,
college?
I graduated from Augie on May 18th, and
So 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 like a month and less than a month and a half, you're already in a PhD.
yeah.
What's it been like? Like you went in one environment, one set of expectations and norms, and now you're in another. And
Yeah.
what's it been like?
I mean, like it's definitely been a transition. Knowing or getting to know people down here. Um, been a little lonely in the beginning, because we're trying to figure out what's going on here. But it's also exciting to get to know new people, get to see new places and stuff like that. Um, it's been nice to have like control over my schedule a lot more, just because I am responsible for a lot of things and figuring out when these things need to get done. But then also having advisor meetings with my PI and her helping me really figure out what are my main goals that I need to get done.
What
But
does PI mean?
uh oh goodness, now I have to think. It's
Oh,
not
it
private
doesn't matter.
investigator, primary. Yeah. Um she's my main advisor. That's
Okay.
more what it is. She's the one that coordinated me getting here, figured out funding, figured out what I was able to do, maybe like listen to my interests and then kind of point me in the right direction, that kind of stuff. Give me opportunities to learn or grow or get to know people. Yeah,
And then how many years is your PhD program?
at least 4. So it all
Um,
depends on how long it takes me to get this research done, because I
how
do
long
have.
it takes you to get enough pollen?
Literally, I was looking, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be growing these plants for a few years, aren't I? Because it's not just one plant. It's like I got to check with multiple species so then I can get a representative sample. And like the first 2 years, I'm taking classes while also doing my primary research. But then after that, I have to start writing stuff for my defending and making sure that I'm all ready and I know all of my crap for when I present my findings.
Your research sounds interesting in so many ways, but you're also going to learn a lot about horticulture from growing
Yeah.
all these plants.
Yeah. One of our PhD students, Lauren, she actually just she's getting married tomorrow, so she's pretty busy herself, and
Yeah.
but she's our plant lady as well. She's been looking at a lot of stuff with climate change with plants and seeing how it affects the bees and stuff, so she really helped me a lot getting started. And I think that's really nice with me in this community, is that I have a whole bunch of resources and a whole bunch of different kinds of um, facets of people who have done different things or who are experts in different things, and that's really helping me get where I need to go.
How big is the concept of collaboration in research?
It is necessary. Um, we as a department, like my I am expected to help others and they're expected to help me in return.
It's
It's
just an expectation.
Yeah. And also it doesn't even feel like it doesn't feel like an obligation. It just feels like, "Oh yeah, I want to help you because
Mm.
you are a good person and you help me and it just works as a family, which has been really nice to come into that welcoming environment right away.
Oh, and I guess I forgot this question too. Will you be teaching classes as a PhD student?
I do not need to. I was able to get my funding in a way that allows me to just be a student and just research. But
Which is
the
great plenty.
yes, it helps me stay focused on what I need to, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to be without teaching. I have a bunch of experience with chemistry and a bunch of instruments and planning things, and I will be in charge of some projects of making sure that I kind of direct people where they need to go to get my research done. So teaching is integral, but maybe not necessarily in a classroom setting.
Interesting, interesting. This question just came to me. If you were a fourth grade science teacher, how would you, or a grade school, it doesn't matter the grade, how would you introduce your young students in science?
Well, I can tell you how my fourth grade and fifth grade teacher got me introduced to science. It was the science fair. I just tried a different problem that I was interested in, and they supported me and they helped me find resources. And I just got comfortable presenting my findings with people. They encouraged me to do so. And I think that's one of the best things to do is just encourage students to be curious and to discover
Mm.
things for themselves. And you're just there to be a resource and kind of guide them on their journey. Yeah.
Well, you're there to nurture the curiosity they already have within them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what my teachers did for me when I was that's when I started really becoming interested in science, was around when I did my first science experiments at that age. So it is very important to encourage around then, because that's when you kind of get people hooked, but also that's when they first start understanding, hey, I could do stuff. I can figure things out. I have that potential, and just keep going from there. But
Mm.
it's okay to it's okay if people find other things that they want to do, but as long as they know that they can discover things for themselves, that will definitely help them in any aspect that of life that they go into. As long as they know that they are able to discover and understand things for themselves and learn.
As long as they know they are able to discover and learn. I mean, like you said, it will help people in any area. Well, powerful, powerful reminder. We're getting towards the end of our conversation. It's been fascinating. I always, in the work I do, I talk about the power of doing our imperfect best. What doing my imperfect best means to me is as I envision the best I want for my own life and for the world around me, and I go towards that. But and when mistakes and obstacles come up, instead of letting them stop me, I try to learn from them, discover new things, and move forward with increased focus and determination. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, Janae?
I think it's embracing my anxiety, knowing that it is a part of myself, and anxiety can be overpowering at points, but also it can help you really organize things, and you can figure out what is most important, what things you need to get done.
Mm,
But it can really detriment your life if you let it just kind of control you. So it's definitely something I've worked through a lot of trying to figure out, okay, what is most important to me right now, and kind of recenter myself. So that is
Mm.
something that I've always had to kind of figure out, what is the thing that I really need to do in front of me right now, and what is the most important, and that helps kind of recenter.
Powerful. Thanks so much for the definition and great definition and for the conversation and for letting I feel I know more about bees definitely after talking to you, but I also feel like I have some new, fresh, exciting metaphors for going about my daily life after talking to you. So thank you much, Jenae. Congratulations on being in your PhD program and have just a wonderful time and exploration of these fascinating things. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and I'm very glad that we met that one day at Dr. O'Hara's office. This has been a very great experience for me. Thank
S-
you.
s- Wonderful. I'm really glad we met too, and was a chance or occurrence you just happened to walk in, but sometimes in life the chance that things lead to opportunities like having you on the podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you again. And yeah, I'm in Mississippi doing the things I want. So that's pretty cool.
Singing MISSISSIPPI.
IPPI.
Thank you, Janae. So fun. I have to admit, like a little before the conversation, I'm like thinking about preparing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to ask questions about bees for an hour. The this isn't going to go well. I don't know that much about bees, but once we got into the conversation, was fascinating to talk about, and I don't know, and then talk about all the metaphors and correlations between bee life and dealing with bees in human life, and just it's a great reminder that abundant conversations are all around us. We can think, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to talk to this person about, that person, or this group of people, but just to be curious, to start asking questions, to engage in a conversation that you have no idea where it's going can be really fun. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode. Tune in next week for another episode of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. And we always love comments, so leave comments if you're inspired. And remember, you are the best and only you in the world. So thanks for being you.